Hello everyone, today we are delighted to be with Chantal Brégeon from the vineyard Philippe Gonet in Mesnil-sur-Augin in Champagne. Did I say that properly?
Parfait, parfait.
Okay, super. So just a little introduction on Chantal. Her vineyard has been around since 1830. It's been in the family for 200 years, 7 generations. Currently, the brother and sister, her and her brother, are running it. And it's a grower champagne, which we're going to go into some detail to explain people what that is. But just the difference for the viewers, a grower champagne is when the people who are making the wine own and operate the vineyards, and they only make wine from their vines. Whereas a Grand Marque is where they just buy grapes from everywhere, and that's how they make their wine. So that's a really interesting distinction. And just to give you an idea of the kind of boutique scale of a grower champagne like Philippe Gonet, the one that Chantal is representing, they make about 200,000 bottles a year. And a big vineyard like, not a big vineyard, a big brand like Veuve Clicquot, for example, I think they make something like 20 million. So it's a completely different scale.
Mm-hmm.
So we're delighted to have you with us. Come all the way over from France to spend a few days with us, do some wonderful wine tastings. We want to hear some funny stories about what you've been up to. And you and your brother are running the show there. And we've got Chantal here with us, and we've got Carlos, our wine buyer, double glasses, Carlos.
Hello, everybody.
So if
Always.
like always, two glasses in case.
I need to see what I'm buying, right?
So yeah, thanks so much for coming to London. Lovely to have you with us.
Yes,
So, yeah.
it's a great pleasure to come and introduce my champagne to everybody here
Yeah.
who are so interested and so engaged. And I like to see these attendees at the masterclass of the champagne dinner that we have done.
Yeah.
They're really, really passionate, like we are, and that's always great to share our love of champagne with all those people.
Yeah, and it's such a stunning champagne. It's become my house champagne. I won't drink anything else. And it's located next to two very famous vineyards. One is Salon, and the other one is Cru.
Yes.
But I think we've got something exceptional here. We've got a little gem that we discovered a few years ago in Gonet, and it's easy the quality of those wines, and it's not at that price, but it's definitely there with quality there.
No, it isn't. I love sparkling wines. I love champagne. And I was very surprised with the quality level of your Brut Reserve. Because normally, the top wines are always of very high quality, but you can really judge a winemaker's attention to detail when you try the entry-level wine, and the entry-level wine has a great value for money. And your Brut Reserve just blew my mind.
Thank you. Well, the Brut Reserve is actually very important to us, and probably the most difficult to produce, because you have to produce really something that is showing your style and your vineyard, your terroir, which is a word that I like to use, but not so many people know what means terroir actually. So if I can explain you.
Please do,
Absolutely.
So terroir is a word invented by a French agronomist called Olivier de Serres in 1600, and it's actually the contraction of territoire, so territory. And it not only means the 4 elements, but also the work of the producer, of the grower. So not only the soil, the sun exposure, of course, the rain, so the water, and the wind, the air. But the work of the grower is very important, because all the time and all the work you do in the vineyard are going to change the style of the wine, of course. So if someone else is working your vineyard, it's going to be a different wine.
Yep.
So this is really important, and the notion of terroir is really this. So it's not subjective, but it's a real thing that depends of 5 factors.
Yeah. That's fantastic. That's why, I mean, for the listeners, when you buy wine, sometimes a single vineyard from a single vineyard kind of area is much more expensive than a wine that's just from a general region.
Yeah. And this is what's interesting, I find fascinating about wine, is that wines produced from a vineyard here will taste so much different than wines produced from a vineyard a mile down the road.
Yes.
It is the effect of terroir, the effect of those minute changes in soil, in climate.
Absolutely.
That's why wine is so fantastic, so fascinating.
The elevation, the composition of the soil. You know, we have a very special soil in Champagne, which is made of this pure white chalk, made more than 100 million years ago when the sea went away back and forth in Champagne, in Europe, actually, with each time a lot of sediment. So this repetition of sedimentation has made 40 meters of white chalk.
Wow.
And this is, of course, different because you have the slopes. So the sedimentation in one place is obviously different than in another place, even if it's 20 meter far from the other place. So that's what makes the wines so different. And also the vineyards, because some of them are young, some of them are old. So the roots are not going to the same depth. So this is also important. So that's all those factors make a different wine, plus the work of the grower, of the people working for us, because we're not just my brother and I. But our team is 15 people and 9 of them are working in the vineyard. So you see how important is the work in the vineyard. And it's important to transmit them and show them what we exactly want to do in our vineyards, the intervention. So they're really, so we have a link with them. They have a link with our vineyards. And that is what is really different with the big names, because they buy the grapes from different producers, and sometimes another person would work in the vineyard and another one will pick up the grapes and another one will do the winemaking, another one will sell the wine, and there is no connection between each other. So there is not the same intention, the same love, the same passion in each bottle, and it's I think it's really different. So when you drink a bottle of Gonet, this is for each bottle for us is important, because our name is on the label. So we want to be proud of each bottle.
Yes,
absolutely.
That's really interesting. It's something that I'm always telling people. Why does Humble Grape buy wine from family producers? If someone owns that property and they own the land and they live off that land, they pour their heart and soul and their blood and their sweat and tears into that, and the wine just is it's just different. It doesn't matter how exceptional the winemaker is or how exceptional the vineyard area is. If you don't have someone who loves that soil and loves those vines like an owner does, it just can't be the same, right?
No, it doesn't. The big brands, it moves away from that artisan craft approach of the winemaker being there and having dirty nails for working in the vineyard to a marketing and spreadsheet exercise.
Exactly.
Right? For the big brands. So the attention to detail isn't there.
And most of the price is in the brand, not in the wine.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. You're not necessarily paying for what's in the bottle; just you're paying for the name. You're paying for the prestige.
Yes, and sometimes you have a lot of intermediary, so margin for the importer, the distributor, the retailer, everybody. So at the end, that's also why it's more expensive. We work directly, so it's also
that's important. So we buy directly from the vineyard, which is why people can drink this wine, at the same price as a grand market. It's easily double quality, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So this is so. Tell us a few funny stories, because you must have been, you've been around for a while. You've had the vineyard for 200 years. I mean, not you personally, the family, but it's not an easy business. It's very hard. You've got to produce wine every year. Sometimes you have a bad vintage, sometimes you have a good one. It's there's probably been some tough times in the past, or maybe some funny stuff that happened. Tell us an interesting story.
We have bad and good stories, but let's talk about the harvest this year, which was really difficult.
Yes.
We have had a lot of rain in July, I guess, like in England, London. We have fairly the same weather.
We know all about rain.
A little bit too much.
Yeah, and I remember this week of July, the 14th of July, it was raining so much. We had to spray the vineyard against the fungus, you know. Each time it rains 20 millimeters, you have to spray copper
Right.
to fight against the mildew.
Yes. Yes.
And actually we had, I think, 60 millimeters in one day.
Wow.
So, and it's so slippery in the vineyard, so not even the tractors can go actually.
So you
So
have to go
you're
in-
just crying because you see all
my
this
God.
water falling down, and it was more tropical showers.
Right.
Now with the climate change, I don't know if it's global warming, but it's
Yeah.
more climate change because we had no warm this year,
Mm.
no heat, no sun, a lack of sun for sure.
Okay.
So yeah, so that was the bad part of this year.
Okay.
And then when we harvested, we had good surprises because even the crop was really small.
Yep.
Sometimes in one bunch we had only a couple of berries, really nice.
Mm-hmm.
All the others were dry, actually, like dry resins,
Right.
because it was dry because of
From
the
the
mildew
fungus. Yeah.
from the fungus, which is not a problem when you press because it doesn't really affect the wine.
Okay.
But the quality of the other grapes were actually quite concentrated. So
Nice.
we had good surprises. So at least we had some good quality. But we had to use a lot of reserve wine, fortunately, in Champagne.
Yeah.
Since 2003, we
Mhm.
have what we call the réserve qualitative.
Mhm.
So if we have over quotas yield, we can harvest. It's your own grapes.
Mhm.
You keep it in tanks.
Yep.
For the future, you may need it or not,
Right.
but at least it's your own vineyards. So in case you have a lack of yield, like this year, so we could use
To make the
2023, because 2023 was a very large crop.
Yeah.
We had too much grapes,
Interesting.
but actually it was a good vintage
So
as
does
well.
that mean you can make the Brut Reserve using the Reserve? And what about the Grand Cru and the Premier Cru? Can you make wines from Reserve as well? But you can't really blend across years then.
As long as you separate the Grand Cru and Premier Cru in different tanks,
Okay.
you can blend Grand Cru and Premier Cru from different harvests.
Okay, understood.
So that's what we do with, for example, the Grand Cru that we have in our portfolio.
Mhm.
And we separate each harvest in different tanks because most of the négociants or a lot of growers still use the Solera system,
Yes.
like in south
Like
of
in-
Spain,
like in
in
sherry, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Or we called it in Champagne the réserve perpétuelle.
Okay.
So you have one tank, which is called the réserve perpétuelle, where
Mhm.
you add the new harvest and you separate just one part to do the current bottling, and then you keep the other part for the next years. So
Okay.
you
Yeah.
always have a réserve perpétuelle
Yes.
in which you add the new wine.
Yes.
So you might have a very little bit of wines dating from 20 years, 30 years, it
Oh,
could
wow.
be. So this réserve perpétuelle is really very biscuity and brings some depth to the wine and also a lot of heaviness.
Oh, that's
But
interesting.
we prefer fresh wines.
Yeah.
So we don't do that.
Okay.
And we separate each harvest in different tanks. So
Okay.
we have a tank of 2020.
But that's more expensive and more complicated, right?
That's more complicated, and you need to have a lot of small vats
Yeah.
to separate everything. But it helps also to keep the identity of each harvest and each plot. If you can separate even the plots, that's even better.
Even better.
Because if you blend everything from the beginning, everything is gonna have the same
It
taste.
becomes generic.
You're gonna have a good view of this harvest, but then you don't let the wine age for a couple of months, 6 months before the blending in April.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something different. So we like to separate and get more complexity
Okay.
into our wines. And separating the harvest keep the wine, I guess, fresher because the harvests are younger than in the Perpétuelle Réserve.
Yeah.
And we like the freshness. We like to have bright wines with that makes you salivate because it's usually before the meal.
Yep.
And you like something that is bright and makes you hungry.
Of course.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Even though we like also champagne dinners because champagne is versatile and can pair with a lot of different food.
Yeah. that's an interesting concept. I discovered a few years ago, maybe 10 years ago, is that in Champagne you have a champagne dinner where every single course is paired with champagne, and you don't have to have white wines or red wines. And I was quite skeptical at first, and then when I tried it, I was like, "This is actually phenomenal." So, can you tell us a bit about the champagne dinners? How does
Yes,
that work?
so I usually advise people when they don't know what to open
Mm-hmm.
as a wine, just take a bottle of champagne. It's going to pair with pretty much everything.
Yeah.
So there is no effort to do. And you start with a glass of champagne as an aperitif, and then you can pair with the whole dinner. And it's actually quite easy. Anything salted is a good pairing.
Mm-hmm.
No sweetness because it enhances the acidity of the champagne. There is too much difference. So I suggest always, fish, seafood, or cheeses, or even meat. If it's white meat, it's quite easy. Chicken, fried chicken.
Nice.
Yeah, really easy. Or pork.
Okay.
And even if you like also spicy food, because it refreshes everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always a good pairing.
That's fantastic. So I'm looking forward to a champagne dinner tonight.
Fantastic, great idea. Fried chicken in champagne. That gives a new spin to your takeaway.
Yeah.
You order fried chicken, open up all the champagne.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I was in the States last week, and they love pizza and champagne. Why not pizza?
In the US, why not?
Or even in the UK, fish and chips and champagne. That's a way of classing up with fish and chips on a Friday night. Open up all the champagne.
Exactly.
Yes.
Good idea.
You talk quite extensively about the reserve wines and only using fresh wines and fruitness. So I sensed you are driving towards what a Gonet style is. So for those listening and watching who've never tried Gonet champagne before, we've got quite a selection from your portfolio. What is the signature of the Gonet wines? What would someone opening a bottle expect to find across all of your wines?
I would say that our champagne are mineral driven because we want to express the minerality of our terroir, of our soil. And the way we work our vineyards is really to show this special chalkiness, this salinity, this freshness, the sapidity. And so the wine is, I think, easier to drink. We have different style, of course. With the Brut Reserve, it's fruitier. With the 3210, it's of course drier because you have this zero dosage, no sugar champagne. It's what we call the detox champagne.
Yeah.
I think it's the best one. Yes.
To have in January, right?
Yes, dry January. 3210.
Only drink dry wine. 3210.
Exactly.
Okay.
So this is great with oysters because you get really the sea taste.
Right.
Really nice. The signature is our first Blanc de Blanc champagne. So our signature is also Blanc de Blanc because we are located in the Côte des Blancs, where we grow a lot of Chardonnay. This is really the epicenter, the mecque of Chardonnay in Champagne. So I would suggest also this one. But you have more the style of Chardonnay, so it's drier and it's with those dry fruits notes or these croissant notes. You know, like you go inside a bakery, the yeasty nose. It's not yet brioche. Brioche is more in the 16, for example.
Yeah, so the vintage,
Yes, the vintage is already with maturity, some aging. It spent 6 years, even 7 on the bottle. So it's with those brioche toastiness starts to come through exactly.
Nice.
And the rosé is also a very nice, actually quite different from the other. First of all, the color you see is very pale.
Yeah.
It's a Côte des Blancs rosé made with 90% Chardonnay, so a lot of Chardonnay and only 10% red wine. And it's what we call the blend rosé. You know, in Champagne you have two methods. The blending or the skin contact. So we produce a red wine first. And we blend 10% of red wine from Pinot Noir and 90% of Chardonnay to make this champagne. And it's again a very delicate, fine, fresh champagne with citrus, grapefruit, little berries. fig as well.
Mhm.
Yes.
It bursts with flavor. That rosé is absolutely delicious.
I hope we're having some tonight.
Yes, we do. It's on the
Excellent.
menu for tonight. Speaking of rosé champagne, there's a question that every now and then we get asked on the floor by customers. Why do rosé champagnes cost a bit more than non-vintage or white champagnes?
Good question.
Yeah, so because the method is different, you have more work, actually, I would say. So either the skin contact or the red wine, and it's a smaller production. I have to say it's between 5 and 7% of our production.
Yeah, that's
So
small.
that's also why it costs more. And it's usually not very, very much expensive, maybe 10-20%.
So maybe 10,000 bottles max, right?
Yes, that's what we do.
That's brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, small is always better.
Yeah.
And I have to say we have a great success with this rosé. Lots of rosé are really sweety girly, with a lot of fruit, but sometimes it's not fresh. It's really what you expect from a champagne.
Yes.
Something that
It's fresh.
wakes you up and tingling in your tongue.
Something you can drink all night.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
There's nothing wrong with that.
It's like a session.
Session wine.
Somebody told me yesterday you have mouth-watering champagne.
Yeah.
So you really want to have a second glass.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Another second glass.
Another second glass. Brilliant.
You mentioned briefly at the beginning of the podcast about the current harvest that was quite challenging. For those, because climate change is a big thing right now, we can tell it's happening. You see recently what happened in Spain with those floods. How else has climate change impacted Champagne? Your family's been there now for 200 years, so you must have records going back to that length. What other changes have you seen in Champagne because of climate change?
I'm going to talk about the vineyards and the cycle of the vineyards, because this is the main change. I don't know if taste-wise it's really, really different, because we try to adapt and to harvest earlier. So the past 10 years, I think we have had 4 harvests in August. Okay. In the past, we used to harvest mid-September, and even I remember 2013, we harvest in October.
So if you have a hotter vintage, you can harvest earlier to keep the freshness.
Exactly, and actually we noticed that the cycle started earlier. The budding time starts earlier, and up to the harvest time, it used to be 100 days, and now it's shortened, and it's probably 90 days, closer to 90 days.
Interesting, huh?
So we just adapt, because if it starts budding earlier and flowering, of course, in June earlier. In June, the days are longer, with longer time of sun, and the photosynthesis is, of course, more intense. So that's why you shorten the cycle, and the maturity is earlier, because you have more
warmth and sunlight.
Exactly, sunlight. Exactly.
That's interesting. So we're adapting to that.
Yeah, so I cannot really say that the taste of the champagne is different, because we always try to have the same balance between acidity and sugar, sugar level, sugar content in the grapes, to make the perfect champagne. But maybe one day, as you say, we will produce red wine, or still red wine, or still white wine, because we could get easier ripeness. But still, this year it was pretty difficult to get even 10% of alcohol. So it's really a challenge. You know that in champagne, the first fermentation gives 11%, and the second fermentation in the bottle to make the bubbles gives 1 more percent. It's a very small fermentation. So the idea is to harvest when you have 11% of alcohol. And this year 10 was already a big challenge.
Yeah.
And it was starting to be cold. The weather was quite cold already mid-September. We had the first day harvest. I think we started 16th of September, and we had 4 degrees in the morning, starting to cut the grapes at 7:30 in the morning. So it's very cold. Yeah.
Interesting.
When in south of France, they are talking about harvesting at night because the
Because
weather
it's
is
too hot.
really,
Because it's too hot.
it's another world.
It's very interesting for viewers who are not familiar with French wine. It's interesting as you go further north into France, Champagne, Loire Valley, the wines are leaner, more acidic because they just don't ripen as much. And you go all the way down to the south in the Languedoc, you can get some big, really high alcohol Chateauneuf de Pape red wines from Bandol and all that kind of stuff. And Champagne is literally used to be on the limit of how far north you could produce wine in Champagne, which is kind of why it's always linked to that acidic style and like really fresh, delicate, light kind of a wine, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you mentioned that, James, because another question that we get often on the floor from customers is, when we get a wine list, how do I choose wines?
Right. Yeah.
And for instance, for those listening and watching the video, if you prefer wines that are lighter, fresher, with less alcohol, then look for wines that come from cooler regions,
Yes.
such as Loire Valley, Burgundy, or if you prefer, like some of us on a Friday night, your big, punchy, alcoholic red wines, then you should be looking for wines that come from warmer regions.
Yeah.
Because the grapes ripen further, and the wines are more alcoholic and big in body. So here's a hint on how to start decrypting a wine list.
Yes.
For those who are listening.
Nice
Yeah.
one.
Still talking about climate change, it's linked to sustainability, which is something that's very important for us.
Yeah.
At Humble Grape, we do a lot of recycling, replanting trees, and you've got vineyards in different areas in Champagne, in Côte de Blanc, Côte de Cézanne, and some of the vineyards are already organic, biodynamic. So what are the challenges that you faced when converting these vineyards into organic, biodynamic, and how difficult it is to keep it up?
Yeah.
Well, we started 15 years ago. First of all, we stopped the herbicide in the
Yes.
vineyard, so we started to plow the vineyards.
Yeah.
So no more grass killer.
So plowing, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. So that's a first challenge because you actually take out all the roots that are on the surface.
Yeah. Yes.
So your vineyard would have to go deeper
Yes.
in the soil, and since you cut everything, they cannot really produce the same quantity as they should.
Yes.
So that's the first thing you
So
notice.
it reduces your yield.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
reduces the yield the first 3 years.
So that's
I
tough
would
on
say,
your business, right?
like maybe 30%.
Wow.
30%.
Yes, that's the
So
main. The
So
main.
it's a big commitment to go organic, right?
It's not even organic because
Okay.
it's just. I'm just talking about grass
100%.
killer.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is just one thing. We are not even talking about the insecticide
Okay.
or spraying chemicals against the mildew, the fungus, which is
Right.
another
Yeah.
thing. So we started with stopping grass killer.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a first stage. And then we started to stop the insecticide.
Right.
So this has to be made collectively with the whole village.
Otherwise, it doesn't help
It
because
doesn't.
they're still spraying somewhere next door, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the insect will go to
Yeah.
your place if you don't do it. So it's one day
So that's
the
a
whole
big decision
village.
for everyone,
It's
right?
a big decision, commitment of everybody, and we're lucky. We have vineyards in 8 different villages, and each village is. Well, Champagne is really committed into that.
Right.
It's probably one of the wine region where we have a lot of those pheromone trapping system.
Mm.
So the idea is you don't kill the insects, you just spray pheromone. Now you put little, you hang little box in the vineyards, and that diffuses those pheromone, and the insects, female and males, are not able to recognize each other, so they go away
To somewhere
next
else.
door.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. so you don't kill them.
That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. So a lot of wine region are now using this system.
And why do they plant roses and stuff like that in the vineyard? Do you guys do that?
Oh yeah, roses actually are very sensible to mildew,
Okay.
and they would warn you.
Oh, so they're like the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to go in your vineyards to look at each leaves to know if you see mildew stains. Immediately, even in your car, you look at your roses.
Yep.
And you
can
see
tell.
that it's time to go.
That's phenomenal.
That is
Spray.
very interesting. I didn't know that either.
It's a warning. It's a nice, lovely warning, actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're plowing, you're planting roses, you're putting pheromones. What else are you doing to go organic?
So then you have the spraying
Okay.
against the sickness of the vineyards.
Okay.
So it's because of the rain. You have the mildew and oidium.
Okay.
The two mushrooms actually that developed. So if you are bio, you use only copper and sulfur.
Okay.
The problem is in our region it rains so much you would have to spray several times in a day copper.
Right.
So we are afraid in our region that one day we'll find copper in the wines. So that's why in our region it's maybe not really adapted.
Right.
So it's sometimes better instead of spraying 5 times copper, just light chemicals.
Yeah.
And it's also think about the fuel that you are using in the tractor. Your carbon footprint. Exactly. And also each time you go in the vineyard with your tractor, you compact
the earth.
So that's also the bad thing of the spraying too much. So that's why this year, for example, some of the champagne growers, they give up the organic farming because it doesn't make sense.
There's no way they can maintain with all the rain. So does that mean they lose organic certification for the year and then they get it back the next year, or how does it?
Yes.
So it's really complicated.
It's very difficult.
But then you have to go in the process again for 3 years to get the certification. So, or sometimes the bank tells you, you know what, your yield this year was too small. You have no revenue. You cannot reimburse your loan. So just stop it. So so it's a decision so that's why we decided to do part biodynamically in those vineyards where it's easier to go.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe one day we'll use drones or that kind of robots to spread your vineyards, because at least
you don't compact the soil and it's easy to get to them.
Exactly.
So this is super interesting for the viewers. Is if someone comes to Humble Grape and has a bottle of wine, it's always going to be slightly more expensive because we go organic, biodynamic, sustainable production, and customers don't always understand why it's slightly more expensive.
And all the difficulties and all the work that goes into it.
I mean, it should be double the price, but it's not. So you're getting much higher quality, and these guys are putting huge amounts of effort just to get it to even close to that level.
And the results were not good this year. Because in some region, like the south of France, I'm not talking about Bordeaux because they have also a lot of rain, but maybe Provence, Languedoc, those regions, they have a lack of rain. So they don't need to spray at all sometimes.
So it's easy to be organic there.
Sometimes I call my friends there, those growers, they say, we spray maybe 3 times this year, maybe 2 times. We do this year 21 times.
Wow, that's huge.
So you see the 10 times more. So it's so different. So you have really to see each region, and even sometimes in Champagne you have one slope where you have a lot of rain because there is a little hill. So
the clouds are hitting.
The clouds doesn't go. So here you don't have rain, but the other one you have rain. So it's so different. That's why it's difficult to do it everywhere biodynamically, because you need to have the people that looks in each vineyard and measure exactly how much water you have had, And so you need to do that very seriously. It's not something you decide just like this.
Yeah.
And the people has to commit also because they
Yeah.
have to go, and even on Sunday you have to go.
Yeah,
So
you have to go. Yeah, you can't.
There's no
decide,
holidays, no
I'm not
day
gonna
off.
be biodynamic because it's a Sunday.
Yeah.
It's a religion,
But
right?
I'm taking a day off. I'm not going to do anything. Yeah, you can't really.
And then biodynamic is another story because you are working with
The lunar cycles.
The lunar cycle.
Yeah.
And you are working with infusions preparation that you spray in water that has been dynamized.
Yeah.
So in a tank where you do a vortex, so you turn during 1 hour in one way and then another way. And so this water will enhance the power of the infusion of the plants that you spray on the vineyards because it has been dynamized.
Yeah.
And you need to use water, rain water, and not from the system. This has been treated
Exactly.
like
Yeah, and it's got all
It has chemicals in it. Yeah.
yeah, so it's
It's a
step
big-
by
it's a-
step
it's a
that
big
you do
process.
that. Yes, and and sometimes you say, okay, the moon is like this today. You need to go, but it's raining so much you cannot go out. So you know what? It's not very.
Yeah, that's not easy. Eh?
No.
Yeah.
There is no rules. You need to adapt to each place. It's really quite complicated.
So yeah, I can see that. So for the listeners, who are going to Champagne, like imagine you are traveling to Champagne. It's easy to get there from the UK. I highly recommend that if anyone hasn't been there, jump on the Eurostar to Paris and then quickly switch trains and go straight into the Champagne area. You'll be there in 3 hours on the train. You can go on a day trip.
Right.
But
Absolutely.
the advice is to avoid all the big names, that have the huge houses and all the fancy stuff, and find the little gems like Gonet. So what would you suggest someone does if they're going to go and visit Champagne for
I
a day?
think you can do both, actually.
Yeah.
It's interesting to see and to compare. Champagne is all about diversity.
Okay.
So I'm not criticizing the champagnes because we would not be here without
If it
them.
wasn't for them, that's true.
So it's I think good to see both.
Yeah.
A little bit of both, and it's nice. But surely you can do in one day.
Yep.
And you take the train, the first Eurostar.
Yep.
You arrive
5 o'clock in the morning.
no, because I'm going to take it tomorrow. It's 6 o'clock. So, 6 o'clock, and you arrive in Paris. It's 2 hours and a half. So 9:30 because 1 hour time difference.
Yeah.
And then you have a train to the next station, Gare de l'Est, and you jump into the train to Épernay.
Yep.
It's an hour, 50 minutes. And then you have to have a car. Rent a car so you can go in the little village and you can see the landscape. Very nice. I suggest May to October because it's with
Fantastic.
green
Yeah.
colors. But it's quite busy. So maybe in wintertime is good also because we have more time as well.
Yeah.
So it depends when you can go, and then you can have lunch in Épernay or in a little village and visit a winery and a tasting, a tour, rent a bicycle in the vineyards. Why
Wow.
not? Yes, you have
Yeah.
plenty of things to do. Reims is also a very nice city.
Yeah. And
Very
the
historical.
cathedral is so
Cathedral is
beautiful.
absolutely
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, I think we need more than a day.
Maybe a long weekend. Now we've got you here, Chantal. It would be rude not to taste one of your wines
Very rude.
and describe to our listeners. I'm sorry, those who are listening to the podcast and watching, you can't taste with us right now, but you can order the wine to taste at home. If you go to humblegrape.co.uk, we put together a little special discount for you. When you check out, if you use the code HG Podcast 10, you get 10% discount.
HG Podcast 10.
HG Podcast 10, you get 10% discount on any of Chantal's amazing wines.
Brilliant.
What do we have in our glass here, Chantal?
Well, so we have the vintage 2016. great vintage, I would say. First of all, if the vintage is written on the label, that means 100% of the grapes coming from 2016, from this harvest. And here it's written Grand Cru. So Grand Cru, in Champagne you have a scale. Each village is rated. So Grand Cru is the top. Just below you have Premier Cru, and then just Champagne. And it's also written Blanc de Blanc. Blanc de Blanc means white of white. And it's white wine from white grapes. And in Champagne it's mostly Chardonnay. Here it's 100% Chardonnay. So it's the total opposite of Brut non-vintage Champagne, because this is a single grape, single vineyard, single harvest. In a Brut non-vintage, you have several grapes,
several vintages,
yeah,
several harvests,
and several
harvests.
Brilliant.
Yes,
That's a really nice description.
Several years, yes, exactly.
So are we going to taste this?
So this 16 has been bottled in May 17. So it's already 8 years.
Nice.
Yes.
Wow,
it's beautiful.
No, 7 years.
The nose, 7 years.
7 years. 6 years on the lees, I would say, and 1 year after dégorgement. So you start to get the secondary aromas of the Chardonnay, which are, as I said before, the fresh butter turned into brioche, a little bit of toastiness, the brioche you put in the toaster in the morning. And the citrus is has now been more like preserved lemon. It's really fresh, but it's not acidic. It's very smooth and very elegant. 16 is actually a very well-balanced vintage. Not too much sun, not too much rain, just what we needed.
Just right.
Yeah. Exactly. And very, very fine, very elegant. It's difficult to decide if we declare a vintage or not. First of all, it's usually less than 10% of the production, sometimes even lesser. And so my brother, who is a winemaker, would decide that. And it's not on the harvest that you decide, on the day of the harvest that you decide, because
you don't know what the wine tastes like yet.
Exactly. Yeah. So it might be perfect on the paper, the sugar level, the acidity. But then after 6 months, when you taste the wine, you need to have something special that tells you, okay, I'm going to become something really great. And if it's already very good to taste, that means that maybe it will not be a vintage. It has to be very delicate, very fine, very gentle.
Not too rich, not too opulent.
Not too rich, exactly. Too opulent from the beginning, usually it doesn't give.
Not a vintage champagne.
Yeah, because the carbon dioxide in the wine maximizes those aromas.
Exactly.
So interesting. I never knew that. That's cool.
Yeah, and sometimes it's really obvious. And you really say, okay, this is really great. We're going to do a vintage with this. So we separate everything. And then you say, okay, this could be a very nice blend addition to this grape, which is with a lot of fruit. And this one has more acidity. Or this one has more length or tension. Or, bitterness. Sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of bitterness in your wine. And so already that you're going to blend with something else. And that's why I was saying at the beginning that the Brut Reserve is the most difficult one to produce, because you produce first the vintage, the top wines, and then at the end, with a palette of a lot of different tanks, you need to produce exactly the same wine that you have produced the year before.
Massively complicated process.
So this is and each year it's a challenge.
So we should just be drinking the vintage champagne.
Absolutely. This 2016, as you said, is amazing.
Yeah.
I can smell and taste the signature of the house, the minerality, the salinity that you mentioned at the staff training on Tuesday.
I mean, this is a great wine for breakfast as well.
Yeah, we need a croissant, I think.
Yeah. Absolutely. This wine, also to me, it smells like Christmas. Your Christmas dinner, we've got Christmas approaching. You've got a Christmas dinner, family around the table, open a couple of bottles of 2016 Gonet. That's perfect way to start the Christmas.
Yeah, I
Christmas
think
lunch.
for me, I'm going to have one of each of those. Just to be ready.
Yes.
You don't want to run out of wine on Christmas Day.
Or even a
Absolutely
Belemnita,
not.
this absolutely great bottle that we have here that I'm going to show you, which comes in a box, actually.
Oh, that's a beautiful gift for Christmas, right?
Yes. First of all, the bottle is really different.
Yep.
The shape is conic, like the shape of the fossils that we find in the chalk that are the bone of the shellfish.
Oh, right. Yeah.
The bone is conic like this.
Yeah.
And so that's what we find in the chalk. And actually, the Latin name of the chalk is Belemnita quadrata. That's why the name of the bottle is Belemnita. The belemnite
Yes.
are actually those bones that you find in the chalk. So they are usually this big and very conic.
Nice.
Yes. So Belemnita, and it's from a vineyard planted in 1929, so almost 100 years.
Wow,
old.
centenary.
Yeah. So those vines have very deep roots, of course, and they really are well integrated into the soil, and they express really the pure style of Le Mesnil. So this is a vineyard that has been planted in Le Mesnil, next to the house of my mother, actually, surrounded by walls on two sides. So there is probably a microclimate on this vineyard. And so the production, of course, is very small because it's an old vineyard. So we produce a very small quantity. This one is number, let me see, 1618. And we did 3,275.
It's a limited edition.
Very
if
limited.
You've got a special gift you want to give someone this Christmas, a limited edition Belemnita 2009. Wow.
Yes, it's 2009, very warm vintage that gives a lot of fruit. And the difference is really that in the nose you get much more aromas on the tertiary aromas, like maybe truffle, like maybe honey, apricot, and also toffee. Only the British know
Why
that.
didn't you open that first?
Yeah, we get the chance to try it tonight. And I found it super interesting in one of our dinners that you paired Belemnita with roasted chicken.
Yes.
Chicken. And I thought, really? But when I tried the wine, I understood why.
Yeah.
It is really a food wine. It's so powerful, so aromatic, so well structured that I can see that going with chicken or with turkey on Christmas dinner.
Yeah. Or caviar, because you have the salinity, and caviar is very savory as well, with a little bit of fat.
Yeah.
And it cuts because you have the freshness, the minerality at the end.
Yeah.
And in the nose, I'm very happy because we have the right glasses to drink champagne. This is very important for you to know.
White wine glasses,
Yes, white wine glasses. Now you can throw away all your flutes.
Yep.
Because you need to have a large glass that lets the wine breathe, of course. And with the oxygenation, it enhances the aromas.
Fantastic.
And with the concentration of the neck, you really get to smell all those great aromas.
It truly does make a difference. At Humble Grape, we've been suggesting this to customers for a few years now, and have your champagne in a white wine glass. A lot of people are skeptical. They love the flutes, but it's been a game changer for me. It's made my enjoyment of champagne go up quite a lot.
Yes. Because even in the flute, you don't have enough space left at the top of the glass to smell the aromas of the wine. Whereas, as you said, in a white wine glass, it changes the way wine tastes and smells.
Yeah. So, just one quick last kind of chat to finish with our conversation here. A lot of people are skeptical about champagne. It's been around for a long time. They might have been stung by expensive stuff that they bought and didn't taste so well, or they didn't understand. For people who aren't really into champagne, how do we suggest they start their journey? I would suggest maybe on a non-vintage.
Something quite easy to taste, something that is not too aggressive or too austere or too sweet maybe. I think just a Brut non-vintage, like the Brut Reserve actually. I think it's a great start. And it's with this fruitiness coming from the Pinot Noir, because you have mainly Pinot Noir. You have the three grapes, Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, Chardonnay.
Yep.
So you have the fruit, you have also the the volume in the mouth, and then the freshness, the Philippe Gonet style.
Brilliant.
So I think it's really a good start, and just let's make it some simple
Yeah.
than too complicated, of course, and enjoy it with just I don't know. You have here croquette. I know on your
Yeah,
menu
yeah,
the
the croquette.
croquettes are just perfect. And if you have nothing, I don't know, chips, almonds, nuts,
Yeah,
cheese.
fantastic.
It goes with almost anything.
Yes,
Well,
cheddar.
thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight speaking to you, and yeah, I'm going to renew my interest in champagne again now. I'm going to be back drinking loads of that stuff, and we look forward to seeing you at the dinner tonight with a bunch of lucky people who are joining us at Vivat Bacchus. We've got a 5 or 6 course tasting menu.
Yes.
With 5 or 6 different champagnes, and it's going to be an absolute delight. Thank you so much for coming to visit us.
Thank
My
you very much,
pleasure,
Chantal. It's been
of
a
course.
pleasure
Thank you.
being here with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent.